Welcome to Gaining the Technology Leadership Edge, a podcast for tech executives. We provide strategies and tactics to help executives succeed and further their career goals. With interviews from industry experts, leaders, and innovators, this show will surely get you on the edge of your seat with thought-provoking advice on how to stay ahead of the competition. Welcome to Gaining the Technology Leadership Edge, a podcast that explores the latest trends, strategies, and insights in the technology leadership world. From emerging technologies to digital transformation and beyond, we are going to discuss the most important topics and ideas shaping the industry today. Join us to learn all of the juicy secrets of tech leaders, their biggest successes and failures, on our quest for gaining that all-important technology edge. So are you ready? Let's get started. Today's guest is Ash Kakish. Ash is the founder of Smartology Tech, which publishes a weekly newsletter covering a week's worth of technology news and trends in about 5 minutes. Smartology's mission is to make it so everyone in the business community can understand what's happening in the tech space, even if you don't have an engineering degree. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Mike. Appreciate you having me on.
I'm glad you're here. Turn on the light real quick. There we go. So tell me, what inspired you to start this company? Because I got to say, I think this is a great idea to like condense the news down into something someone can consume in a bite-sized piece.
Yeah, and you know, candidly, we're not the first people to launch a newsletter, right? Morning Brew and several others have done it way before us. But I think when I was looking out across the resources that were available in the tech space, a lot of these types of resources, whether it's news focused or trends or educational resources, tend to be geared towards engineers, developers, people that are on the brainier side of the tech space, right? There was really nothing geared towards salespeople, people in marketing, people that aren't necessarily in tech but are tech adjacent, right? They're real estate professionals that work with tech people, or financial advisors, or people that are just have tangents in that. And so what our goal was to write something that was both comprehensive, entertaining, but succinct. It wouldn't take a whole lot of time. You didn't need to research a ton of information. Everything you would want to have is right at your fingertips. And if you wanted to dig a little bit deeper, the resources were readily available. So that's what we set out to do with Smartology. And so far the feedback has been great.
Awesome. So where are you sourcing your news that you're putting into this newsletter?
Yeah, across everything. So we go to the Verge, we go to CNET, CNN, BBC, Reuters, Wired, Gizmo magazine. The goal isn't just to cover big tech. Obviously, we talk a lot about Google, Microsoft, Salesforce, Amazon, right? The big players that touch 90 to 95% of what we all do on a daily basis. But it's to really get into emerging trends, right? So we'll get into popular mechanic. We'll get into robotics. We'll talk about supply chain technology, healthcare technology. And the goal is to spread it out. So luckily, the resources are pretty vast across the internet. It just takes a couple of Google alerts and searches to be able to kind of automate that process. And from there, just try to curate it to what we think people are going to want to read about and understand.
So you mentioned earlier that your newsletter's aimed at more like marketing type people. Is that correct?
Marketing, sales, and business professionals. So everybody that's that's not tech focused, right? So if you're an IT sysadmin, if you're a CIO, if you're an IT director, you may find this useful, right? But it could be remedial for somebody like that. Our goal here is to target an audience that isn't ultra techy, but are smart, right? And are able to read something and understand it. One of our taglines is that being dumb is optional. If you want to know what's going on, you can. You don't have to be completely in the dark, right? And so our goal is to be able to bring news to those that want it and information to those that are looking for it without a major time commitment.
I like that. You don't have to be smart.
Yeah, being dumb is optional, man. If you want to be dumb, you can be dumb, but you don't have to be,
So do you actually kind of try to summarize the news down and kind of like, what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of consolidate it down into like a more understandable snippet, or how are you handling that?
Yeah, that's exactly it. So we'll take something like when we're talking about ChatGPT and AI, right? Being able to understand generative search versus, link-based search. And those are very heady topics that, the average business person has no clue. So the goal is to be able to explain it in a way that makes sense for the audience that we're targeting, right? Without diving too deep into zeros and ones, but also giving the audience a little bit of credit for being intelligent people that can understand something, as long as we're able to explain it properly, right? And so we try to cover the news plus the topic, and kind of add little nuggets of explanations as we go throughout the newsletter for people to make sure that they know the context of what it is we're talking about.
So what is your background? What drove you to do something like this? Because it's very interesting.
Yeah, so I've spent the last 20 or so years in sales and marketing. I got kicked out of college at a very early age, and found myself, wanting to get into sales and get into the business world, but nobody would really hire a 20-year-old college dropout. So I started my career off going door to door selling office supplies from a catalog. And man, I'll tell you, I did it for 2 years, and I learned more than I think I've ever learned in my entire life. I got to sit down with business owners and admins, and people that are ordering paper and toner and ink, and they would just tell me about their business, and I was very open to the conversation. But from there, I was able to leverage enough experience to get into corporate sales, and I found myself super infatuated by the tech space. And so for the last 10 years, I've been in partner management and partner development for various companies, everything from large technology distributors to independent consultants that are, working with small business owners on procuring technology solutions. And my job is to be able to help them be a generalist, right? Help them understand what's available to their customers in the tech space across whether it's networking, voice and data, cloud security, infrastructure, both physical and virtual. And so having to understand all of these concepts and all of these technologies has really given me a passion for it, and geared me towards being able to take, something as complicated as, layer 3 infrastructure security and explain it to a person that has absolutely no clue what it is. And that's where the origin started. And I found that, I'm good at it. I'm good at explaining, taking complicated concepts and explaining it in a non-demeaning way to smart people, right? To where it doesn't come across condescending. And that's what helped us really think of the idea for the newsletter. So, well, what if we can provide a resource like this regularly to the business community and try to add some value?
So you've done something, well, you've kind of pointed out something that I've noticed. I was a CTO for a lot of years, and I dealt with a lot of salespeople who were trying to sell me this, that, or the other thing. And what I've noticed was the smartest salespeople paid a lot of attention, and they asked a lot of questions. And they were the most knowledgeable people, the really smart ones. And I think it's because you talk to so many different types of businesses. Like as over the past few years, I've done a lot of consulting work, and I know more about different industries now than I did when I started, because you pay attention and you learn. And I think you were smart to do that, because the other salespeople, they just sort of focused, the ones I would deal with that I wasn't super impressed with, they would always just focus on their product. And I think you come up with new ideas by listening to other people. Groupthink is a real thing, like I think companies that only rely on groupthink make a big mistake. But like, I teach my clients a system of managing meetings. It's called PACE, and basically they involve their team in all the decisions that are made, and they don't have to listen to what they say, but at least they get the feedback. And like when I was a CTO, the biggest thing would be if people out on the front line communicating with your customer, so to speak, and yet I never knew half the stuff they knew because they were told things that I wasn't told. And sometimes it's because of your position. You know, you're the chief technology officer. They don't want to tell you that they don't like this piece of the software or that piece of the software, not realizing that you can't fix things for them if they don't ask the questions and tell you. So like in your case, you've now launched an entire business because you paid attention to the needs of people that you were outselling to. And I think that's amazing.
Well, and that's the thing with most salespeople, right? They're hammers, and when all you have in your toolbox is a hammer, that's all you know how to do. Is everything becomes a nail, right?
Yep.
And I think the best salespeople out there that eventually, move on to the executive track, and some of them don't. Some of them just really want to stay
They like it.
Yeah, they like it. They enjoy it. The best salespeople out there, and you were right on the money. They listen. They ask questions. Unfortunately, most people, and this is a psychological thing, nobody wants to feel stupid, unfortunately, and they think that if they ask questions or talk about something they're not familiar with, that they're going to be seen as somebody that's lacking intelligence. And, as we said, being dumb is optional. It's okay to be dumb. You can stay there for a little while as long as you're asking questions and you're looking for the information. Eventually you gain the knowledge, right? And that's how a kid from the south side of Chicago with immigrant parents is able to sit with IT directors and CIOs at the top companies and talk about artificial intelligence and talk about cybersecurity strategies and things that I was never taught in college, but by asking the right types of questions and going out there and getting the answers to those questions, you're able to learn it. And that's my biggest piece of advice to every salesperson that I work with, like learn the things that you don't know, even if they're not directly related to your job, because, people respect other people that have gone out there and gotten the knowledge. I'm sure probably when you were a CTO, your team was probably scared of you and they didn't want to tell you information. They didn't want to look stupid.
That is the problem. Like no matter how much you tell people there's no such thing as a stupid question, they still think they're stupid for having a question. And I used to try to hammer the concept in their head that if you have a question, probably other people do. That's one thing you need to think about. But if you have a question and it's affecting your job, like you can't do something because you don't know the answer, why aren't you going to ask the question? I think though, the key to that is the leader. I mean, you have to set it up so that when they ask the question, you don't make them feel stupid. Totally. See, you can tell them there's no such thing as a stupid question, but then if they ask the question, you go, "Oh, I can't believe you asked me that." What's the point at that point? Well, I mean, they're never going to ask you ever again. Like it's just not going to happen. And I think that's the key is making you have to let them know that they can ask the question, but then you have to actually react in a way that they go, "Oh, he didn't make me feel dumb for asking this question." So what kind of people are signing up for your newsletter?
Oh man, so we're just over 500 subscribers. We launched at the beginning of this year, and really we're gaining through word of mouth and through personal referral networks and people sharing the newsletter with other people. We're gaining probably about 20 to 25 new followers a week at this point. I think that's just going to skyrocket up. But we've got everybody. It's salespeople, it's IT people, it's people that own their own businesses, right? We've got people that own MSP practices or their own consultant firms. And we've got executives from, large technology companies that know me, that know what I'm able to do and kind of what I bring to the table. And their feedback has been great. My dentist just signed up for it recently and I was telling him about it. And, he's a great example of somebody that just knows what they know, right? And getting outside of his own little bubble is very tough. So this gives him a resource to be able to take 5 minutes on a Sunday night, read through it, get informed on something other than teeth and gums, and that's a great example of what we're trying to do.
It's interesting because, my wife and I moved to Vegas last year, and one of the things we decided was, there's so much going on here in the city, obviously, that there's a newsletter called Citycast. And what this guy does is similar to what you're talking about. He just takes little topics that are going on with the city and he puts the news in there. He puts his out daily, of course, because that's how much is going on here. But he also highlights like entertainment that's going on. And it's not always just the big name people that he highlights. He highlights every piece of entertainment that might be interesting to people. And so my wife and I found is by reading that newsletter, we're so much better informed about the city than even people who've lived their entire life here. And so I think what you're doing is a great service to business owners, because years ago, technology was kind of like the extra thing that you added to a business. I think nowadays, everything is technology based. I don't care who says someone tries to tell you they're not in a technology based business, they're lying. They rely on a website, they rely on social media, et cetera. And I think by you providing this information in a way they can absorb it and understand it, it's only going to help them grow their business. And I think you're doing a service that maybe at first they may not realize how important it's going to be to their business growth, right? So, I mean, do you have any goals around like that kind of stuff, like helping people scale up their business based off of the stories that you give, or are your newsletters more thematic?
Yeah. So, I mean, 90%, right? 90% of your life, of our lives, of the life of the average business person is touched by Microsoft, Google, and Apple. Those three. And that's not even, if we throw Amazon into the mix, you're at 100%. Like they cover all. And so, and that's for the average business person. We're not even talking about technology professionals, right? If you're a lawyer, right, 90% of your life, right, is touched by Google, Microsoft, and Apple. And so what I'm trying to do, and really what we're trying to do with Smartology is lift the veil on this stuff. It's not mysterious. It's not magical. It's not that hard to understand. It's very, very simple. It's businesses, it's corporations, right? Huge multi-conglomerate corporations that have a stranglehold on the majority of our lives. And as users of the technology, we should be informed of what's going on, what's coming down the pipe, what's going to be the next big trend to disrupt my industry. And by being aware of that, business leaders can stay ahead of the curve. I mean, all the rage right now is artificial intelligence, right? It's AI. The big one that everybody talks about, ChatGPT, has come along. And, I mean, I know lawyers that are rewriting their briefs just by plugging it into ChatGPT, and they're getting all of their briefs written for them. I don't know how legal that is, but it's not just, like you mentioned, it's not just the fringes, right? It's not just the unspoken fourth industry. It's mainstream. And I think in the world we live in today, it all comes at us so much faster than it used to. In 6 months, our lives can be completely upended by a particular technology. Look at what happened to us. The pandemic obviously drove a lot of that growth, but we went from what is a virtual meeting, and this only happens to people, to everybody knows what a virtual meeting is, and a Zoom call has become a large part of our vernacular. And that happened in a couple of months. It wasn't a long transition, and I think we're going to find the same happening in AI. I think it's going to be, people are going to blink, and next thing they know, a robot's telling them what to do in just about every angle of their life.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because like I always tell people, to me, one of the biggest things to come out of the pandemic was the resurrection of the QR code.
Yeah.
I mean, QR codes have been around a long, long time, and nobody knew how to use them. I mean, like, you'd put that, what is that? You'd go, what is the heck is that? Now you could be, 75 years old. If you went out to a restaurant, you know how to use a QR code.
Absolutely. Everybody does. That's a great point. The resurrection of the QR code is a phenomenal success story of the pandemic, but one of the few, right? And I hate menus. I go and I don't want to touch a menu. I don't know how many people touched it. I don't know if they cleaned it. So to me, having the QR code option has been phenomenal. You see it at church. My church throws QR codes up on the screen. You click it,
and you can just scan it from a distance. Yeah,
beautiful.
It's an interesting point you make there too, because like I can remember prior to lockdowns, but when the pandemic was first starting to become a known issue, we were at a Chili's restaurant, and there was a manager sitting in a booth with menus stacked really high and disinfectant, and he was wiping them down. And I looked at my wife and I said, if only they'd been doing that all along. Like, then when they switched to the digital menu, I'm with you. I was cheering, because I don't want to touch some other menu that someone spilled food on, and what you don't even think about how nasty and dirty some of this stuff can be. But you mentioned AI and you mentioned ChatGPT. And I think an important kind of like the QR code. It's why I mentioned the QR codes actually. I think an important aspect is people are going to need to be taught how to properly use AI. It isn't about put something in there and let it spit it out and then you just go use it. You have to put it in there, let them spit it out, make some changes, ask it to improve it a little bit, make some more changes. And it's more like the way I look at AI today, especially for writing, is as though I have an employee who writes my copy for me, and then I edit it and give it back to them, have them fix a little further. In the end, it's nothing like either one of us would have come up with, but it's great because it's, two heads gone together. So what do you think, just put your, what am I calling it? Your psychic hat on. What do you think the future is with AI?
So you actually brought up a really interesting point that we're discussing in this week's issue. It's part of our theme. It's adapting to this new normal, right? And as can business leaders get out ahead of it? I think the biggest demand for job skills, people are going to stop looking at Excel. Can you use Excel or PowerPoint? Nobody cares. Can you learn how to speak to an AI properly? Because the big thing with ChatGPT is it's not a search bar. You're not looking for links. It's generative search. It's conversational search, right? So can you speak to this artificial intelligence in a way that is able to gain back maximum results? And in the same way, can you speak to kindergartners and teach them their shapes and colors? Not everybody can, right? Not everybody can talk to children. Not everybody can have that type of a dialogue. And AI really isn't. I wouldn't say infancy, but it's toddler stage, right? It can talk, it can walk, it can tell you what a circle and a square is, right? But it's not. It has to wait to be given instructions in order to give you back something meaningful. And so a very strong skill set that business leaders need to develop or look for people that have is the ability to conversate with a ChatGPT or with Bard, which is Google's AI that they're going to be launching.
Yeah.
And a dozen others that are going to be coming. Alibaba is launching their own AI. They don't have a name for it yet. We're going to turn around, and I don't know how familiar you are with network technology, right? But about 6 years ago, SD-WAN was the big trend, right? Mm-hmm. People are moving away from MPLS networks and moving into more software-defined wide area networks. And it changed the game for people that had legacy networking skills and couldn't understand now this application-driven type of networking. You were phased out. You weren't really valid anymore because you didn't have the skills and you didn't learn the skills with this new type of network technology. So I know a lot of engineers that were completely out of work because they refused to get. They thought it was going to be a fad. They thought it was just going to be something that came and went, right? And so it's going to be the same with ChatGPT, with Bard, and with whatever comes down the line. Can you, as a business leader, identify the skill sets needed to function in this new normal? And I think the business leaders that are thoughtful and are able to adapt, or even if they can't do it themselves, it's like you said, Mike, when you were a CTO, there are things you didn't know, but other people knew, and you were able to identify the right talent to do it. And I think business leaders that hop on this early, in 6 months, 8 months, 10 months, whatever, however long it takes for this to really be the new normal. And from what I'm hearing, it's coming fast.
Sooner than later, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Bing is releasing their ChatGPT based browser, their Edge, the Microsoft Edge with ChatGPT, Bing sort of under the surface. It's coming within the next couple of weeks. And they're incorporating it. I think next month they're launching the Observe AI tools within PowerPoint and Word, and it's going to be the new normal. And so, to answer your question, if I'm putting on my psychic hat, I would say to the business leaders that you work with and that are part of my newsletter, get on it. Don't waste any time. Identify the skill set, figure it out quick. See who you already have within your employee pool that could learn this, and if not, go out and hire some people that can, because it's going to be your best if you think it is.
I actually think there's going to become a line of a career path of someone who knows how to prompt the AI properly. Because like, I'll give you an example. Like, this is my ChatGPT tip for the day. You may know this, you may not know this, but it has this thing called act as if. So you tell it, act as if you're a kindergarten teacher. Now explain this. And then it'll explain it totally differently than if you hadn't said that. And it kind of dumbs things down a little bit. Or you can say, act as a digital marketer. Now write me this. And it writes it more like, story-based, etc.
Mhm.
But I think people who know how to prompt it properly are going to become in demand, because I already saw in my inbox, and I actually attended the webinar just because it was intriguing, but there's a guy who wrote a software called Copy Pro. And essentially, it's the typical, you get this template, you fill in the blanks and you massage it a little bit to fit your way, and you've got professionally written copy. He was teaching people how to use 2 AI tools plus his tool to make money selling emails to people that they could send out for their business. And it's already starting. I saw one the other day called the ChatGPT wealth formula. It's starting. People are coming up with their ideas for how. And honestly, I've seen so many technology trends come and go, but I've never seen one light on fire this fast. It's like it showed up on the scene, and I mean, it even got to the point where you couldn't use it because it was constantly down.
Constantly. And I think, a couple of weeks ago, we launched, we had a feature on our newsletter is, 10 careers that are going to be made obsolete by AI. And it's a clickbait article, right? Candidly, there's
Sure.
at no point will, one of those is financial advisors, right? And, because if you can program the artificial intelligence to make trades for you based on certain parameters and then learn the trends and what's coming, then is your job really going to be that meaningful? But I don't think that's fair to say for any industry, right? Lawyers are another one, right? I mean, you can throw the entire, legal manual at an AI, you can ask it any question and it can give you advice, fill out forms for you. But I think what's going to be obsolete isn't necessarily the profession, but the people that refuse to adapt to the new way
Exactly.
of handling the profession, right? Because your value as a lawyer or a financial advisor or a marketer, right? Your value isn't in, I can punch some letters on my computer and spit out paperwork. Your value is in your expertise. Your value is in your ability to critically think, right? Things that AIs can't do yet. There's no critical thinking skills or thinking outside the box. I mean, all they can do is tabulate the information given and spit out information, and then learn new information and spit out. They can't think the way humans can think yet. It's probably going to come sooner than we think it is, but not yet. And so, back to your point, it's going to be very in demand. People that can conversate with AI, they're not just going to be a career path, but it's going to save careers. It's going to save people's professions. It's going to save them from losing customers,
I'll give you an example. Like, obviously this show goes up on YouTube, and YouTube has a description area, and it's really important to be found through that description. And YouTube added an AI description generator, but it goes off of keywords you give it and what you already wrote. And it definitely makes the description better. And it made me think, like, my social media scheduling tool has an AI component to it that it'll help you write the caption. I think what's going to happen is, like, e-commerce companies help me write descriptions of my products that are going to attract people in. And what I find really interesting about that is you can tell the AI a tone to use that matches your business's personality, and it's consistent. You don't see marketing materials where it's kind of going up and down. It's consistently the same style of message because you told it to do that. But again, if all you do is, like you said, if all you do is go in and say, hey, ChatGPT, write me a description for this product, it's going to give you some weird description. It may not fit your tone, it's not your voice, and people are going to be like turned off by that. But I agree with you. I think using, like I said, I have to write the description for YouTube, but then if I ask it, hey, can you improve this for me? It will. And I think that's where people are going to, as long as they don't shy away from its use. I think it's going to be great. I mean, one of the things I still don't understand, I kept hearing rumors that Google was going to penalize people who used AI to write blog posts. And I say to myself, I don't understand it. Like, I could hire a writer to write for me. I didn't write it. So why am I being penalized because I didn't write that? Like, it doesn't make much sense to me, especially since you can run those things through plagiarism checkers and they are not plagiarized. It's all original. That's the thing that blows my mind. Now, I will say this. Have you looked at the AI art?
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's I've played around with it myself a little bit.
It's interesting.
That's another example, right? You can say, draw me a picture of a man sitting on a beach, right? And it'll give you a man on a beach. But then you can be like, draw me a picture of a tall man wearing shorts, sitting on a beach with his legs crossed at mid-sunset, and you get as descriptive as possible. And so that goes back to understanding the skill set, right? If you're an illustrator, this is, graphic designers is a huge outcry, right? It's going to put us out of work. It's going to put us out of work. But again, if you're able to take these tools and figure out not how to fight them, but how can I work with this tool to make my job better, right? You can maintain the ability to have a career within this industry. But going back to the plagiarism thing, one of the wild things coming out is, schools are getting very aggressive about students leveraging these AI tools because it's making they're no longer writing their own articles. They're going in a few prompts into an AI, and so it's this next generation, the one that comes after Gen Z. I don't know what they call themselves.
Yeah.
But that's going to be the group as they get into college that are really going to change the way we all function. Guys like myself are going to be completely phased out because we're not going to be able to operate. I mean, so I grew up with an analog childhood and a digital adulthood, right? So
yeah,
I gotta stay sharp in order to be able to get on top of these things. My kids that grew up within this stuff, it's such a normal way of life for them that it's important. If you want to stay relevant, it's important to continue to gain these new skills. And now more than ever.
I think the thing with the schools is an interesting one. I hadn't thought of. I mean, I've thought of it prior today, but I hadn't thought of it when ChatGPT, for instance, first came out. But I think it's going to force teachers to focus less on grading people off of essays and more on testing. And it's kind of unfortunate because some people aren't good at testing, but I think they're going to have to, because you're right. Like the knowledge that you have, if you're a smart student and you're paying attention to what the AI is telling you and you're looking into it and you're making it your own and you're like modifying it and you're doing it the right way. If you're using the AI as a collaborator, you're fine. But if you're using it to write your project for you, you're not learning anything. And that's why I think they're going to focus on testing. That's kind of interesting. So let's say it's 5 years from now. What do you hope to see for your company in 5 years from now?
Oh, that's a great question. So I think, for me, it's all about responding to the demand, right? Understanding what's happening in the market, being able to continue to publish the newsletter. But in 5 years, our goal is to have a very active community, very engaged community that understands that the value isn't in just one particular skill set. The value is in the culmination of all our insight together, right? And so growing, within this next year, we'll launch our social media channels, being able to put out content, more short form, more focused on individual topics. But ideally, within that time frame, we're able to help provide as much value to the business community as possible. Maybe somebody will come and buy us. Who knows? Maybe we'll sell. Wouldn't hate that either. I mean, morning brew sold for a large chunk, right?
I'm sure you wouldn't hate that.
we're way too early to have that conversation.
Yeah.
But in 5 years, as long as we're continuing to put out good, relatable, value-driven content, then I'll consider that a success story.
Yeah, you got to do like me. Like, I get people reaching out to me all the time saying, "Oh, we have business funding. How much money would make you happy?" And I'll say $100 million. And then they'll respond back, "Are you nuts?" Well, no, you asked me how much would make me happy. And I said $100 million. I mean, the same thing. When the time comes and someone wants to buy your company, set the price as high as you want to set it, because they're either going to say yes and see the value, or say no, and you still own your company. Well, that's really interesting. I think that that's a great, actually, I personally think for a company like yours, having a goal of being bought by somebody is a great idea, because I mean, when you think about it, if you start do you charge for your subscriptions?
Not yet. We've got a pay model. Eventually, I think, we're figuring out when, but we're going to go to a daily format, and that'll have a pay model behind it. But that's the goal. That's kind of why we chose Beehive as our platform, because they make rolling into a subscription model relatively easy.
Yeah, I think that even that though, like, a paid model, it's got its scalability problems. So what but I think one of the values you're going to have is the amount of data you're collecting on different topics, that you can sort of become a resource for people who are trying to curate information. I know I use some of like I'm really into sports, and so like I subscribe to the Atlantic, and I go to their website a lot because I'll remember, last year I remember they talked about this, but I can't find it anywhere else. I'll go to their website and I'll look and I'll find it. And I think, to me, that's the value of their service. To me, is less the newsletter and more the finding the info later. I actually think that's why it's a good end. If you were my client and I was like trying to help you figure out where to go with your business, I would think that being bought out by somebody, it would be the end goal, because you're going to make more money. I mean, I worked for a company that Grubhub purchased for $85 million, 100% to grab our technology. And so that's the thing. People say, who would pay for that collection of data? A lot of people. You'd be surprised who'll pay. I mean, what do you think? Why do you think Facebook is free?
Yeah, I mean, our newsletter average is right at about a 44% open rate, and we're
That's good.
nearing like a 19% click rate. Unique click rate.
Yes.
And so we've got a pretty engaged audience as it is. So if we can continue to scale at this path and continue to have people engaged in our content and want to read it, I mean, within the first hour of opening, within the first hour, again, the newsletter comes out every Sunday evening. Usually publish it between 7 and 8 o'clock, but within that first hour, we'll have about 20% open rate just in that first hour. So people are getting it, opening it.
They're watching for it. They're
looking for it, and when it comes through, it's something that they want to read. So that's a great compliment to me, right? As a creator of this stuff, that it's something that people want to engage with, because I've done a lot of things in my career, a lot of it cold calling, right? When you pick up the phone and nobody wants to talk to you. So you deal with enough of that. It's always nice to have something where people are interested in getting the information from you, right? And so
that is amazing, because I know myself in my off hours, there's very few emails that I could receive that I would want to read right away and click through to read the articles. And so if people are doing that, you're doing something right for sure, because and all you need to do is build that up. Like you said, higher click-through rate. The open rate's phenomenal. I mean, if you're getting that kind of open rate, people are definitely interested in what you have to offer, which is good, because a lot of times people subscribe to something, they read one newsletter, and then they never open it again. But they also are too lazy to unsubscribe,
Well, we get a couple of those too. I mean, listen, some people don't want to see it. They don't want the content. And I'd rather have people unsubscribe and just not waste my distribution. But no, I think for us, the more we can continue to understand what it is people want to read, and it depends week by week. One thing we do is it really is thematic, right? What was in the news this week? What was discussed? What are the hot issues this particular week, right? Where does it fit into the overall macro landscape of business? And how can it relate to people like me and people like you that are dealing with a lot of different types of businesses, right? And so because you asked that question earlier, so it is very much thematic, and I think certain weeks there's just more interesting things that people want to click on than other weeks. People are tired of hearing about Elon Musk. Elon Musk gets no clicks. Nobody cares about Elon Musk anymore.
Even on Twitter, he was complaining that his tweets aren't, nobody's reacting to his tweets. Well, that's because they're kind of tired of it, I think. The story gets old. Yeah, the story gets old.
That's where we are as a society, right? We've all become very desensitized, and we're just like, there's so much coming at us all the time, so quickly, that even the most dramatic things that happen kind of make us shrug our shoulders and be like, well, that's and so for me and for kind of what we're trying to do, it's, well, how do we cut through the noise, give people the stuff that they want to hear about, that they're interested in, keep the politics out of it, keep the opinions out of it, and just provide straight, good information that's useful and beneficial for people, and that's what we try to do.
Well, I love your passion and focus, and this has been a great conversation. So why don't you let people know where they can find you and subscribe?
Absolutely. They can head over to our website, to Smartology.tech. From there, they can click and subscribe to the newsletter. And then they can follow our socials. Our largest presence is probably on LinkedIn right now. So if you search Smartology on LinkedIn, you'll see a plethora of stuff there. But in the next few months, we'll be launching our TikTok and Instagram and Facebook channels as well.
Awesome. Yeah, that's when your fun's really going to begin.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, again, thanks again for being here. Truly appreciate it. I'm going to make sure that your URL is in the show notes so that people can find it, and in the description for the video. But thanks everyone for tuning in to Gaining the Technology Leadership Edge. We hope you've had a great time with us, learning everything you need to know to stay ahead of the technology curve. Just remember, be curious, be updated on all the latest trends, and show them who's the boss. Until next time, we'll be back with plenty more techie tips and tricks so you can stay on top of your game. See ya, people.